Roman Reigns just did the unthinkable. He called R-Truth the missing piece of his legacy. Yeah, you heard that right. The same R-Truth who once pinned Brock Lesnar with a roll-up in a fever dream of a segment. The same R-Truth who thinks Little Jimmy is still an active roster member. And now Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, is begging Triple H to bring him back? Why? Because Paul Heyman's Syndicate is tightening the noose. Roman's running out of allies. Out of blood. Out of time. And when all the gold and glory fade, sometimes the only thing left to save you is the wild card. So, before you laugh, ask yourself, what does Roman know about R-Truth that the rest of the world forgot? Let's break it down. In a company where egos run wild and loyalty is fleeting, the man who dubbed himself the head of the table, the self-proclaimed tribal chief who smashed legends, stacked main eventers, and ruled WWE with calculated dominance for over 3 years, is now begging. But it's who he's begging for that's got the wrestling world in a chokehold of disbelief. R-Truth. Yes. R-Truth. The same R-Truth who once mistook Money in the Bank for a ladder match at a Royal Rumble. The guy who had an imaginary friend named Little Jimmy and made entire arenas burst into laughter with nonsensical promos that somehow made perfect sense. The man who danced his way through backstage segments more times than he competed in serious matches. And now, this man is the missing piece in Roman Reigns' master plan? Why? What's going on behind the scenes that we don't see? What does Roman Reigns know that we've forgotten, or never even considered? Let's not dismiss this as a joke just yet. Because if Roman Reigns, the man who's beaten The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, Cody Rhodes, John Cena, and essentially carried WWE through a new golden era, is willing to humble himself and ask for R-Truth, then maybe the joke's on us. Roman Reigns didn't get here by luck. He's a strategist, a manipulator, a leader. Every move is intentional. Every alliance has been transactional. He's used bloodlines and betrayals, whispers and wars, to build a legacy wrapped in gold and fear. But now, something's changed. The cracks in the empire are no longer rumors. They're visible. Palpable. The family is broken. The Usos have turned. Solo Sikoa looks restless. Paul Heyman is whispering to new ears, young blood, hungrier wolves. Roman's invincibility is wobbling. He knows it. And in desperation, in the moment where every king questions who he can truly trust, Roman Reigns has looked not to a warrior, not to a monster, not to a technician. Let's talk about R-Truth, not the punchline, but the performer. Behind the comedy, the pratfalls, and the rap entrances is a man who has survived in WWE for decades. That's not a fluke. That's not luck. That's veteran instinct. You don't stay on Vince McMahon's payroll for 20+ years unless you offer something no one else can. You don't keep getting called back unless you bring value, heart, and something authentic in an industry drowning in gimmicks. R-Truth has shared rings with The Rock, Edge, John Cena, and even Kurt Angle. He's held gold, yes, even the World Tag Team titles. He's not just comic relief. He's a wild card. The kind you never see coming, but when he hits, he hits. So maybe Roman doesn't see a joke. Maybe he sees a wild card who doesn't play by the rules, and can't be read by enemies. And that's exactly what he needs right now. Here's what we're going to explore. Why is R-Truth the man Roman trusts, now that his kingdom is in flames? What does Triple H think about this? And can the boss really say no to the face of the company? Could this be WWE's boldest creative twist in years, or a masterclass in misdirection? And most of all, what does this say about Roman's legacy? Because for all the power, all the championship reigns, and all the blood spilled, legacies in wrestling aren't built on dominance alone. They're built on the moments no one saw coming. R-Truth stepping into a Roman Reigns storyline in 2025 isn't just unpredictable, it's insane. Which is why it just might be brilliant. So, before you roll your eyes or close the tab, ask yourself, what does Roman Reigns know about R-Truth that the rest of the world has forgotten? Why is the tribal chief, the most dominant force in modern wrestling, reaching into the shadows to pull out a man no one took seriously? And what happens if truth actually says yes? We're about to dive deep into the heart of one of the strangest, most shocking moves in WWE history. This isn't parody. This isn't fantasy booking. This is Roman Reigns, facing the edge of collapse, and calling on the one man who never fit the system, to save him from it. Let's break it all down. To understand why Roman Reigns would ever consider calling in R-Truth, we have to start by taking a hard look at where WWE is right now, not just as a company, but as a battlefield. Because this isn't just about entertainment anymore. This is about strategy, survival, and the subtle collapse of a kingdom that once seemed untouchable. For over 3 years, WWE was Roman Reigns' house. From SummerSlam 2020 onward, he steamrolled challengers, united his family under the bloodline banner, and transformed into the kind of champion that rewrote the very fabric of main event storytelling. He was less of a competitor and more of a ruler. Cold, methodical, untouchable. His promos were gospel. His matches, chess games. Every title defense felt like a coronation. But that era is cracking. And it's cracking fast. The bloodline is no longer a unified front. Jey Uso walked out. Jimmy got super kicked into irrelevance. Solo Sikoa, once Roman's loyal enforcer, now walks with a different posture, head high, eyes scanning, not for threats, but for opportunity. The loyalty has faded. And Paul Heyman, the mastermind behind the entire machine, seems more interested in future investments than preserving a fading dynasty. This isn't fiction. It's evolution. The cycle that chews up kings and births new ones is turning again, and Roman can feel it. The shift isn't coming. It's already here. Paul Heyman, the ultimate opportunist in professional wrestling, has quietly begun positioning himself with the next wave of dominant stars. You can see it in his expressions. In the way he's begun talking about what's best for the future of WWE. Not Roman's future. WWE's. That's not a mistake. That's a message. We've seen this playbook before. Heyman was once the advocate for Brock Lesnar. He was the mouthpiece for CM Punk. He built those men into monsters and then moved on when they stopped serving his long game. The moment he sees weakness, he invests elsewhere. And now, all signs point to him doing it again. Enter the Syndicate. No official name. No formal announcement. But if you've been paying attention, the pieces are there. Braun Breaker, the genetic freak with the body of a linebacker and the speed of a cruiserweight. Carmelo Hayes, too smooth, too cocky, and too good to stay in the mid-card for long. Solo Sikoa, finally stepping into his own and away from Roman's shadow. And Paul Heyman, in the background, whispering, watching, waiting. This new collective, whether it's officially named or not, has already started asserting dominance. They've interfered in high-profile matches, ambushed key figures backstage, and shown a unity that the current version of the bloodline sorely lacks. While Roman is out giving speeches about family, these guys are stacking bodies. The era of tribal dominance is ending. The age of calculated rebellion is beginning. And Roman knows it. He's not stupid. For all his bravado, Roman Reigns is a master tactician. He's always been 3 steps ahead, until now. Now, he's slipping. And that's the worst position a king can be in. Not dethroned. Just off balance. Vulnerable. And here's where the story gets even darker. Because Roman doesn't just have external threats. Internally, he's alone. The people who once stood beside him, his blood, are gone. The bloodline wasn't just a faction. It was a fortress. And now that fortress is burning. Jey Uso walked out on him in front of the entire world. A moment so raw, so emotionally charged, that it shook fans and insiders alike. That wasn't just a turn. That was a statement. Jimmy followed, hesitantly, but decisively. The message from both was clear: the tribal chief is no longer the leader. He's the burden. And then there's Solo. The one who was supposed to be the future. The enforcer. The silent weapon. But silence doesn't mean loyalty. Watch his eyes. Watch how he hesitates now. How he lingers when Heyman speaks. There's something brewing there, something dangerous. Not rebellion. Strategy. Solo isn't a pawn anymore. And Heyman? He sees it. He's grooming Solo for something bigger. For something without Roman. So now we've got a kingdom without soldiers, a general surrounded by enemies, and a mentor playing both sides. And what about the rest of WWE? Cody Rhodes is circling, ready for his next shot. Seth Rollins, still thriving as World Heavyweight Champion, looms as a constant thorn. Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, each of them with history, each of them dangerous. Even Randy Orton is back in the conversation. There are no safe directions for Roman to turn. No shortcuts left. Triple H, the man pulling the creative strings, is clearly shifting the company into its next phase. He's betting on athleticism, hunger, unpredictability. No more reliance on legacy acts and nostalgia. He's focused on what's next. On new faces with old-school grit. That leaves Roman in a precarious spot. Not obsolete, but optional. And that's a scary place for a man who's defined himself as essential. All of this adds up to a very simple truth. Roman Reigns is running out of time. Not because he's not good enough. Not because he's lost his edge. But because the system he built his empire on is evolving without him. The walls are closing in, and the only way to survive may be to do something completely unexpected. And this brings us back to our truth. Because when every expected move is a dead end, when every ally is either gone or a traitor, you don't turn to logic. You turn to chaos. Our truth represents that chaos. He's not in anyone's faction. He's not tied to any agenda. He's a wild card in a business where wild cards change the game. He can't be predicted. He can't be manipulated. He doesn't play by the rules. And that makes him valuable. WWE's current landscape is shifting beneath everyone's feet. Old alliances are dissolving. New empires are rising. The future is uncertain. And Roman Reigns, the man who once ruled it all, is reaching for something completely outside the system to save himself from it. Not because it makes sense. But because it's the only move left that might. Who is our truth, really? You know the punchlines. The little Jimmy antics. The time he stormed the Royal Rumble thinking it was money in the bank. The years of dancing, disappearing, and winning the 24/7 championship more times than anyone can count. Our truth has been the butt of jokes, the king of comic relief, and the momentary breather between high-stakes matches for over 2 decades. But if that's all you see, then you're missing the whole damn point. Because behind the jokes, the reps, and the chaos is one of the most versatile, durable, and underestimated performers in WWE history. And Roman Reigns may be the only one who truly sees it. Let's strip away the gimmicks for a minute and ask a question no one ever bothers to ask: who is our truth, really? Ron Killings was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. Long before he ever stepped foot in a WWE ring, he lived the kind of life most superstars only try to act out in promos. He wasn't handed a dream. He had to fight for it. Coming up in a rough environment, he found hip-hop before he found wrestling. His early days were defined by hustle, literally and metaphorically. He wasn't plucked from a performance center or groomed in developmental. He earned his way in the trenches of indie shows and side hustles. That edge, that real-world grit, never left him. You can see it in his eyes when the mask slips. When he debuted in WWE as K-Quick in 1999, he was thrown into the tag division with Road Dogg. He rapped to the ring, danced through matches, and looked like a guy who was just happy to be there. But even then, the work rate was undeniable. Quick feet. Crisp execution. He sold like a veteran, took bumps like a machine, and made every opponent look like $1,000,000. Then WWE let him go. Most guys fade after that. But R-Truth reinvented himself. He became Ron the Truth Killings in TNA and started building a resume that demanded respect. He didn't just compete, he became the first recognized African-American NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Twice. That's not a trivia fact. That's history. That's legacy. In TNA, he went toe-to-toe with AJ Styles, Jeff Jarrett, and Sting. And he did it without comedy. This was R-Truth at his most raw. No jokes. No punchlines. Just a man fighting for his place in wrestling's upper echelon. When WWE brought him back in 2008, they leaned into the entertainer side of his persona. And he ran with it. Because he understood the game. He made himself essential, not through dominance, but through range. He could get a laugh, pull a reaction, and make fans care. Whether he was tagging with The Miz, chasing the 24/7 title, or randomly popping up during matches he wasn't booked in, he stayed relevant. And here's the kicker, he never lost the room. That's rare. It's one thing to be funny once. It's another to be funny for 15 straight years and still be over. R-Truth somehow managed to be both the punchline and the fan favorite. That takes intelligence, instinct, and timing. 3 things you can't teach in a ring. Roman Reigns knows this. Because Roman's been in those locker rooms. He's seen who commands respect. He knows who gets quiet when truth walks by. And that's what most fans don't see. R-Truth is one of the most respected veterans in the industry. Not because he's the loudest. But because he's survived. He's endured multiple eras, ruthless aggression, PG, reality, and now the modern era, without needing a reboot. Without needing a heel turn or a shock return. He's always been there, always been himself, and always been effective. There's a reason the locker room loves him. There's a reason guys like John Cena, Edge, and Triple H have vouched for him over the years. Because he's not just reliable. He's real. In a business full of performance, R-Truth is one of the few guys who's always been authentic. And here's where things get even more interesting. Behind the scenes, R-Truth is considered a wrestling genius. Seriously. Multiple superstars have gone on record saying that Truth has one of the sharpest minds in the business. He understands timing, psychology, crowd engagement, and character work at a level most people overlook. Even his comedy is calculated. Every bit, every line, every confused stare, it's all done with precision. He reads the room better than most top guys. And in an era where crowd connection is more important than ever, that skill is invaluable. So, when Roman Reigns looks at the chessboard and sees his pawns gone, his bishops defected, and his queen playing both sides, who does he turn to? Not a monster. Not a technician. Not a predictable choice. He turns to the one man who can do what no one else can, disarm the enemy by being unpredictable. Because unpredictability is power. In warfare. In business. And especially in wrestling. R-Truth has always lived in that space. He's not bound by storylines. He pops up where he shouldn't. He makes fans laugh when they're supposed to boo. He warps the script in real time. And that makes him dangerous, not because he breaks the fourth wall, but because he controls it. The truth is, R-Truth isn't a sideshow. He's a weapon. Roman Reigns, for all his bravado and dominance, is a survivor. And when survivors get desperate, they don't look for more muscle. They look for chaos. They look for the one thing no enemy can prepare for. R-Truth is that thing. He's not just a legend. He's not just a locker room leader. He's not even just a wild card. He's the one man who's been underestimated for so long, people forgot he ever needed to be taken seriously. And now, maybe for the first time in over a decade, the world is starting to remember. The secret history between Roman and R-Truth. At first glance, there's no visible thread connecting Roman Reigns and R-Truth. They're not from the same era. They didn't rise together. They haven't shared iconic storylines. There's no well-documented tag team run or main event rivalry. In WWE canon, these two men barely intersect. But wrestling isn't just what happens on camera. The real stories, the ones that change careers and shape legacies, are the ones no one talks about. The locker room stories. The off-camera interactions. The invisible threads. And when you start digging, a different picture forms. It starts backstage. Roman Reigns came into WWE with a lot to prove. A former football player from a legendary family, expectations weighed heavy on his shoulders from day one. He didn't come up the traditional indie route. He didn't cut his teeth on bingo hall circuits. He was picked, primed, and pushed. And that meant eyes were on him constantly, waiting to see if he'd sink or swim. In that kind of environment, respect isn't given. It's guarded. And for the first year or two, Roman wasn't exactly beloved behind the scenes. He was part of the Shield, sure, but everyone saw the writing on the wall. He was the chosen one. The next top guy. The next Cena. The company's next investment. That creates distance. And sometimes, resentment. Except not from R-Truth. Truth, who'd already been with WWE for years and seen dozens of guys come and go, didn't see a threat. He saw a young guy trying to figure it out. And according to multiple second-hand accounts, Truth was one of the first veterans to treat Roman like an equal. Not a project. Not a rival. Just another guy trying to make it. Small moments, quiet ones, build trust fast. Sources from former road agents and locker room insiders talk about how R-Truth would go out of his way to check on younger talent. To give feedback without ego. And Roman, who was still growing into his role, reportedly took those conversations seriously. There's no video of it. No documentary proof. But those moments matter. Especially in WWE, where politics and ego often cloud mentorship. In that environment, respect runs deeper than friendship. And once it's earned, it's hard to forget. There's also the matter of survival. Both Roman and Truth understand what it means to be written off. Roman was booed mercilessly when he was pushed as a babyface. The fans turned on him for years, not because he was bad, but because they didn't want the version of him they were being fed. WWE kept pushing, and Roman had to carry the weight of that rejection night after night. People forget now because of his tribal chief era, but Roman spent a good chunk of his prime being hated, not for what he did, but for what he represented. And Truth? He was never taken seriously in the first place. From the moment he started dancing to the ring, people saw him as a clown. Even after becoming NWA champion in TNA, WWE brought him back for comedy. The fans loved him, but no one ever pushed for him to main event. He was always the breather, the palate cleanser, the guy you throw out to make people laugh. He never stopped showing up. He never stopped delivering. But the respect came quietly. Slowly. Without fanfare. So when Roman looks at R-Truth, maybe he doesn't see a joke. Maybe he sees a reflection. Two men who have walked through different kinds of fire. Two men who learned how to survive when no one was rooting for them. That creates a bond, even if it's never spoken. There's also this to consider: WWE live events. Roman and Truth have worked dozens of non-televised matches on house shows over the years. These matches never air, never trend, and never go viral. But they're where trust is built. Where chemistry is tested. Multiple insiders and wrestlers have shared that Roman always respected guys who could make a dead crowd care. R-Truth was that guy. Every time. Whether it was 5 people or 50,000, Truth knew how to light up a room. And that's the kind of guy you want beside you when the stakes are real. Then there's the cancer. In 2018, Roman Reigns announced that his leukemia had returned. The moment shocked the wrestling world. It broke the kayfabe wall wide open. This wasn't the tribal chief speaking. This was Joe and OI, man to man, asking the world for understanding. R-Truth was reportedly one of the first to check in backstage. Because real recognizes real. That kind of support isn't forgotten. Especially not in a business where the lines between reality and fiction blur constantly. When you drop the act, the people who show up for you, the ones who don't need to tweet about it or make a show of it, stand out. And R-Truth? He's always been one of those guys. There's also a theory, unconfirmed but plausible, that Roman's recent backstage frustrations with the Bloodline storyline and the shifting power dynamics under Triple H's creative leadership have led him to seek more input in who he works with. If that's the case, then this isn't just Roman begging for truth, it's Roman advocating. Politicking. Pushing. Using his influence to bring someone in who isn't just good TV, but someone he trusts. Someone who gets it. Because here's the hidden truth about WWE, trust is everything. Who you trust to sell your moves. Who you trust to carry a promo. Who you trust to keep a storyline alive. The best programs, the ones that elevate everyone, are built on mutual respect and understanding. Roman has that with very few people right now. Heyman? Slipping. Solo? Unstable. The Usos? Gone. The locker room? Watching. But Truth? Truth never left. He's never asked for anything. Never demanded a title shot. Never gone off script. He just shows up, delivers, and makes everyone around him better. Roman remembers that. So when the walls started to close in, when the empire began to fall, and when the options ran thin, Roman Reigns didn't reach for another monster. He reached for the one guy who's been bulletproof in a system that eats its own. And maybe that's the real secret between them. Not a friendship. Not a storyline. But a quiet understanding that in a world built on noise, there's power in showing up, staying ready, and being the one guy no one ever saw coming. If Roman Reigns is the face of an empire in decline, Paul Heyman is the architect quietly drafting blueprints for what comes next. He always has been. That's what makes him dangerous. While Roman plays chess in the ring, Heyman is playing poker behind the scenes. Cards close to his chest, lies layered in truth, always planning for the next hand before the current one is even done. It's what he's done his entire career. Paul Heyman is not a manager. He's not a mouthpiece. He's not even a promoter in the traditional sense. Heyman is a strategist. A manipulator. A political animal operating in the shadows of professional wrestling's biggest power structures. And when he moves, it's not out of loyalty. It's out of leverage. For 3 years, Roman Reigns was Heyman's ace. The perfect vessel for dominance. The man who could carry the Universal title, carry the company, and carry Heyman's legacy deeper into WWE mythology. He wasn't just Roman's wise man. He was the conductor behind the curtain, setting the tone, controlling the narrative, and cutting some of the sharpest promos of the era. He made Roman into something more than a superstar, he made him inevitable. But empires are temporary. And Heyman doesn't do permanent alliances. That's why, right now, there are strong signs Heyman is doing what he's always done when he senses a kingdom falling, he's building a new one. And this new kingdom? It's younger. Hungrier. And far less forgiving. The seeds have already been planted. Braun Breaker has been moving with the kind of chaos Heyman thrives on. Fast, violent, and unapologetically brutal. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't need to. He breaks people. And Heyman loves monsters he can control. He built Brock Lesnar's legend on the same formula. Then there's Solo Sikoa. The silent enforcer of the bloodline. For months, he was the muscle, the hitman, the man with no words and 1,000 warnings. But that silence has started to feel less like loyalty and more like calculation. You can see it in how he's positioned himself lately, always a step outside of Roman's shadow, never committing fully to either side, waiting. Watching. Paul Heyman sees Solo as something more than muscle. He sees potential. Maybe even a new tribal chief. One he can mold from scratch. Carmelo Hayes, another name thrown around in backstage whispers, represents the future of WWE's in-ring style, speed, charisma, agility, attitude. A complete contrast to Roman's slow-burn dominance. And that's exactly what Heyman might be drawn to. He doesn't just go after strength, he goes after stars. And Melo shines on and off camera. If you look at these moves in isolation, they're interesting. But not alarming. Talented young stars getting screen time. That's the surface-level narrative. But line them up together, Breaker, Sikoa, Hayes, and it starts to look like something else. It starts to look like a syndicate. Heyman has always had an eye for the next big thing. In ECW, he took unknowns and turned them into cult legends. In WWE, he launched Brock Lesnar into superstardom, elevated CM Punk's pipe bomb into revolution, and rebuilt Roman Reigns from the ruins of fan rejection into a once-in-a-generation champion. He doesn't attach himself to stars. He builds them. And then, when they no longer need him, or worse, when he no longer needs them, he moves on. And here's the brutal truth Roman is starting to confront: Paul Heyman is already moving on. Watch the promos. Listen to the tone. Heyman's words aren't as sharp, aren't as focused when he's at Roman's side anymore. There's a subtle detachment, a weariness. He still calls Roman the tribal chief, but the conviction isn't there. He's hedging. Protecting himself. Preparing for life after Roman. Because for Heyman, the legacy isn't about Roman's reign, it's about his own relevance. He sees the writing on the wall. Roman's grip is slipping. The bloodline is fractured. The crowd is turning. And Triple H's creative vision is slowly reshaping the company into something Roman may not fit into much longer. The smarter move, the Heyman move, is to start building the next dominant force before the current one collapses. This is why R-Truth matters. Because Roman isn't just fighting opponents now. He's fighting erosion. He's fighting betrayal. And worst of all, he's fighting the man who once propped him up, now shifting his weight to the other side. Heyman hasn't turned on Roman. Not yet. But that's the most dangerous version of Heyman, the version that stays loyal just long enough to ensure a soft landing on the next island. It's the same play he ran with Brock Lesnar. When Lesnar stopped being the draw, Heyman found Roman. When Punk left, Heyman didn't mourn, he adapted. Every Heyman alliance is transactional. And every one of them ends the same way, with him standing beside the next champion, holding the microphone, rewriting history in real time. And now, with the Syndicate, or whatever this group will soon be called, he's ready to rewrite it again. The scary part? He might pull it off. Because Heyman isn't just surrounding himself with talent. He's surrounding himself with killers. Guys who don't care about nostalgia, legacy, or family. Guys who only care about dominance. He's creating an empire not built on tradition, but on evolution. That's why Roman is desperate. That's why he's reaching for someone like R-Truth. Because R-Truth is the one person Heyman can't predict. Can't manipulate. Can't fit into a mold. And in a game where Paul Heyman controls the rules, the only way to beat him might be to bring in someone who refuses to play. Roman Reigns knows he can't beat Heyman's Syndicate with brute force. He needs unpredictability. Chaos. Someone Heyman underestimates. Someone the crowd doesn't see coming. And R-Truth is the ultimate blind spot. That makes him valuable. That makes him essential. Because if Roman's going to survive what's coming, he doesn't need another soldier. He needs a wild card. Roman Reigns doesn't beg. That's been his whole character. His whole identity. The tribal chief. The head of the table. The man who makes others kneel. Roman commands. He demands. He dominates. He doesn't ask. So when the news breaks, Roman Reigns is pleading with Triple H to bring back R-Truth, it's not just a strange headline. It's a red flag. It signals something bigger. Something deeper. Something cracked. Because if Roman is begging, then everything he built is falling apart, and he knows it. Over the past 3 years, Roman Reigns has become the most protected, promoted, and powerful champion in WWE history. His title reign surpassed 1,000 days. He beat Brock Lesnar, Edge, Bryan Danielson, John Cena, Cody Rhodes. The list of names isn't just impressive, it's absurd. No one looked like they could touch him. No one looked like they should. He walked slower. Talked calmer. Wrestled smarter. His matches weren't flurries, they were psychological dissections. Roman didn't win because he was faster or stronger. He won because he waited. He watched. He struck only when it mattered. And that kind of dominance doesn't happen unless the machine is working with you. For a long time, it was. Vince McMahon was still calling creative shots when Roman was crowned Universal Champion. And Vince knew Roman was the investment. He'd tried for years to make Roman work as a babyface. It failed over and over. But this heel version? This mob boss persona, flanked by family and hyped by Heyman? It clicked. Roman became not just the face of WWE but the spine of the entire main event structure. But now Vince is gone. Triple H is in charge. And Triple H doesn't do mob bosses. He does ring generals. He does gritty realism. He wants guys who can go bell to bell. Guys who cut real promos. Guys who adapt. And Roman? He's struggling to keep up. The cracks began with Cody Rhodes. When Cody returned, fans saw a hero they chose, not one that was chosen for them. And the atmosphere shifted. Roman wasn't booed as a heel. He was questioned as a symbol. And that's more dangerous. Because once the aura fades, what's left? Then came the bloodline collapse. Jey Uso left. Jimmy followed. Solo Sikoa stopped nodding. And Paul Heyman, the backbone of Roman's transformation, began to show signs of doubt. Not betrayal. Just hesitation. The kind that says, I'm looking for the exit. It's no longer just about title defenses. It's about power. Influence. Relevancy. And Roman Reigns is losing all three. Worse than that, he's feeling it. He walks to the ring a little slower now, not with arrogance, but with weight. His promos are still sharp, but the pauses between lines have a different kind of silence. Not theatrical. Hesitant. He's trying to find the rhythm again. Trying to remember what made him invincible. And that's the most dangerous place a dominant character can be. Self-aware. When the top guy starts asking questions about his allies, his fans, his future, it's only a matter of time before the story turns against him. And Roman feels that pressure. Not from the crowd. From the mirror. He's trying to patch leaks in a boat that's already taking on water. And in this moment, in this panic, in this psychological spiral, that's where R-Truth enters the picture. It's not a logical move. It's not a strategic play. It's emotional. It's desperate. Because R-Truth represents something Roman doesn't have anymore, freedom. R-Truth isn't trapped by expectations. He doesn't answer to creative hierarchies or family narratives. He walks in, makes people laugh, makes people care, and leaves. He doesn't need a title to matter. He doesn't need bloodlines. He's beloved just for being himself. Roman envies that. Because the tribal chief isn't a person anymore. He's a performance. And Roman is tired of performing. He's tired of acting strong when the family's gone. Tired of pretending Paul Heyman is still in his corner. Tired of watching the machine that once protected him now promote everyone else. He knows what happens next. He's seen it. Cena, Orton, Lesnar. All former Golden Boys. All eventually replaced. And now Roman's hearing the footsteps. So he does something no one saw coming. He picks up the phone. He asks for R-Truth. Not because Truth is a threat, but because Truth is the only one left who isn't playing a game. And in a world where everything's scripted, political, and performative, that's power. That's Truth. Roman is no longer fighting for dominance. He's fighting for clarity. He's grasping for something real before the lights go out. And in his mind, R-Truth is the one man who might still be untouched by the corruption of the business. That's what desperation looks like. Not panic, but reaching for the only honest thing left in a world of liars. In a locker room full of machines, monsters, and main eventers, R-Truth doesn't fit. He never has. He's too unpredictable. Too unserious. Too slippery to box into a mold. And that, ironically, is exactly why he might be the most valuable asset in WWE right now. This is what Roman Reigns understands, and what the rest of the world is only starting to realize, when everything becomes predictable. When every move, every promo, every finish is expected, the only thing that can truly shake the system is a wild card. And there is no greater wild card than R-Truth. Let's get this straight, R-Truth doesn't operate within the same framework as other wrestlers. He doesn't build feuds. He crashes them. He doesn't cut traditional promos. He rewrites the vibe mid-sentence. He doesn't sell you on a match. He pulls you into a moment. And before you can even figure out what's happening, it's over, and the crowd's roaring. That kind of chaotic energy can't be replicated. It can't be manufactured. You either have it or you don't. R-Truth has it in buckets. And chaos, when weaponized, is one of the most powerful tools in pro wrestling. Look at the current landscape. The Syndicate is rising with precision. Heyman is positioning killers like chess pieces. Every move is deliberate. Every matchup is calculated. They want to dismantle Roman Reigns in stages. Break his aura. Isolate him. Make him look human again. That strategy depends on predictability. On control. R-Truth is the antithesis of control. He doesn't follow scripts. He doesn't stay in his lane. He doesn't even acknowledge the rules half the time. He walks into segments he's not booked for. He turns interviews into comedy bits. He pins people in golf courses, parking lots, and dressing rooms. The moment he enters a scene, it no longer belongs to the format. It belongs to him. You can't strategize against that. And that's why he's dangerous. Most wrestlers bring skill, presence, or brutality. Truth brings unpredictability. He brings disruption. He makes people forget the stakes, and in that distraction, he resets the story. That's exactly what Roman Reigns needs right now. His problem isn't just enemies. It's repetition. It's fatigue. The fans have seen every version of his story. The drama. The betrayal. The family tension. The Heyman twists. It's becoming a loop. Roman's aura is thinning not because he's losing matches, but because his story no longer surprises. Enter Truth. Truth doesn't just refresh the narrative, he rewires it. He makes everything feel new again. Because with Truth, there is no expectation. Anything can happen. The moment he shows up, you stop looking for the beat you're used to, and you start watching for what happens next. That's power. And Roman knows it. He doesn't need another enforcer. He doesn't need a technician or a former champion. He needs the one guy who doesn't belong in the story, because that's the only kind of person who can change its outcome. Think back to every great heel faction in history. What broke them? Not always power. Sometimes, it was absurdity. Something they couldn't explain or predict. The New World Order started to fracture when things got weird. The authority lost its grip when people like Daniel Bryan threw off their balance. Chaos disrupts power. It short-circuits authority. That's what truth does. He's not a punchline. He's a reset button. There's also something deeper happening here, something psychological. Truth's presence forces people to drop their guard. He's disarming. Even dangerous heels smirk when he walks in. That disarms tension. It rewires attention. And in those moments of confusion, he creates opportunity. Opportunity for Roman to strike. Roman isn't stupid. He's not asking Truth to fight the Syndicate in a steel cage. He's not bringing him in for muscle. He's bringing him in to throw off the rhythm. To shake the narrative. To remind fans and enemies alike that the game isn't over. It's just shifted. And Truth? He thrives in this shift. He's been underestimated for years. But while the world laughed, he learned. He studied. He perfected the art of chaos. He turned every segment into a showcase. He made nonsense look like genius. And in a company where everyone's fighting for 5 minutes of relevance, Truth stayed relevant by breaking every rule. That's not a fluke. That's mastery. He's the kind of performer who, once deployed correctly, can flip the script without needing to pin anyone. Just his presence, just his interruptions, just his bizarre logic, can undo weeks of planning from people like Heyman. And Heyman? He can't play chess against a man who isn't on the board. That's the move Roman is making. He's betting on a man who no one would ever expect, not because he's desperate, but because he's smart. If you're losing the match piece by piece, you don't grab another piece. You flip the board. That's what our Truth is. He's not the answer. He's the glitch in the question. The moment the rumor dropped, Roman Reigns wants our Truth back in WWE, wrestling Twitter imploded. Reddit threads lit up. YouTube reaction videos with titles like "No way this is real" or "Roman's losing it" started gaining views by the thousands. Instagram reels with crying laughing emojis flooded timelines. Everyone had the same initial reaction: this had to be a joke. But as the hours turned into days and the story gained traction, something unexpected happened. The laughs didn't stop. But they started changing tone. The irony wore off. The sarcasm thinned out. And what replaced it was something no one saw coming: support. Real support. The idea of our Truth returning, at Roman Reigns' request, didn't just become palatable. It started to feel right. Let's rewind to the first wave of reactions. It was chaos. Comedy memes ruled the moment. Someone edited a fake promo poster that showed Roman Reigns in full tribal chief gear, staring down across the ring at our Truth holding the 24/7 championship like it was the Infinity Gauntlet. Another viral tweet simply read, "If Roman needs our Truth to save the bloodline, then we are truly in the endgame." Underneath that humor was a more grounded truth. People were stunned. Shocked. Even the idea that Reigns would reach out to our Truth hit fans like an emotional slap. The tribal chief, the most dominant character in modern wrestling, asking for help from the company's longtime comic relief? On paper, it didn't make sense. But wrestling isn't just about logic. It's about moments. And this moment touched a nerve. The meme culture surrounding our Truth has always been strong, but that's only because of how consistently he delivers in small doses. He's been out of the main event picture for so long, most casual fans had filed him under fun mid-card guy. But once Roman's alleged plea hit the news cycle, fans started revisiting the archives. And what they found surprised them. People started posting old Truth promos, serious ones from his heel run in 2011. Matches from TNA where he wrestled like a main eventer. Interviews where he spoke with quiet confidence about his role in the company. Suddenly, fans were remembering that our Truth wasn't just funny. He was good. And more than that, he was respected. The narrative began shifting. The laughter didn't stop, but now it came with asterisks. Wait, what if this actually works? Low-key, this might be genius. Roman bringing in the one guy nobody expects could actually be the most Roman move of all. In the subreddit r/squared circle, a post titled "Roman wants R-Truth back, am I crazy for loving this?" hit the front page within 2 hours. The comments were a mix of jokes and nostalgia, but the underlying vibe was clear: people were intrigued. One user wrote, "Truth is a Swiss Army knife. He can do literally anything. If Roman is bringing him in, I'm watching every second." Another added, "This is some Emperor Palpatine-level chess from Roman. Bring in the guy no one can predict?" Truthfully, no pun intended, this might be the smartest move he's made. Fan polls followed. Twitter engagement soared. Wrestling podcasts jumped on the story with glee. Most hosts opened with laughter, but nearly every show ended with the same realization: this might actually be brilliant. The support wasn't just emotional, it was historical. Fans began pointing to Truth's tenure, his multiple returns, his uncanny ability to connect with every generation of WWE audiences. From the Attitude Era to ruthless aggression, PG to reality, R-Truth had been there. Not just surviving, thriving. That kind of longevity doesn't happen by accident. The feedback loop became stronger as mainstream outlets picked up on the buzz. Even ESPN's Wrestling Desk posted a clip montage titled "Never Underestimate R-Truth," showcasing his in-ring highlights, his comedic gold, and his role in some of the most memorable moments of the last decade. Suddenly, Truth wasn't just trending. He was relevant. And part of that has to be credited to Roman Reigns himself. Because whether it was strategic or not, Roman's rumored move reframed the public perception of R-Truth overnight. It made fans stop laughing at him and start laughing with him again. It made them see what they'd forgotten, that underneath all the chaos is one of the most versatile performers in WWE history. The emotion shifted too. Beyond the comedy and the memes, fans started rooting for Truth not just as a character, but as a man. This was a guy who had given everything to the business, who had stuck around through every regime change, every brand split, every title redesign. A guy who had nothing left to prove, and yet, was still being underestimated. Now, people wanted to see him shine. They wanted him to return. And most surprisingly, they wanted to see him align with Roman Reigns. Because if this really is the end of the Tribal Chief era, if Roman is truly staring down the barrel of his final days as champion, then bringing in R-Truth is poetic in a way nobody expected. It's unpredictable. It's absurd. It's emotional. And somehow, it just makes sense. The wrestling world is built on moments. Sometimes they're epic. Sometimes they're hilarious. Sometimes they're tragic. And every now and then, one moment is all three. Roman Reigns calling for R-Truth? That just might be one of them. In the high-stakes theater of WWE, very few people actually hold the power to shift the direction of the entire company. Roman Reigns commands the ring. Paul Heyman plays chess with talent. But behind the curtain, the man holding the final script is Paul Levesque, better known to the world as Triple H. And right now, he's facing a decision that could be as creatively bold as it is politically risky, whether or not to bring back R-Truth at the specific request of Roman Reigns. On the surface, it seems like a small move. R-Truth isn't a main event draw. He doesn't headline pay-per-views. He's not a merchandise machine or a network selling name. For years, he's been used as comedic seasoning, sprinkled in to balance out an otherwise serious product. But now, in a moment where the tribal chief is unraveling, and the bloodline saga is turning volatile, Truth represents something far more dangerous than he ever has before. He represents the unknown. And for a man like Triple H, whose entire creative direction has been centered around control, pacing, and long-term arcs, unknown is the one element he can't fully account for. Let's be clear, Triple H is not the same executive Vince McMahon was. Vince chased shock. He lived for chaos. He loved swerves, sometimes at the expense of logic. Hunter, on the other hand, has always been about purpose. He builds stories over time, invests in slow-burn character arcs, and tries to strike a balance between pure wrestling and mass-market entertainment. And for the past 2 years, his fingerprints on WWE have been evident. He brought prestige back to titles. He emphasized match quality. He elevated NXT talent onto the main roster with purpose and patience. He gave space for returns, but not randomly. He tied everything into a coherent vision of the WWE universe. Everything has a role. Everyone has a place. So where, in that vision, does R-Truth fit? That's the dilemma. Bringing R-Truth back at Roman Reigns' request wouldn't just be unexpected, it would be disruptive. It would throw a wrench into the storylines Triple H has been cultivating. It would risk turning one of WWE's most serious, emotionally grounded arcs into something bordering on farce. Unless, that's the point. Triple H is smart. He doesn't just listen to social media chatter, he reads the deeper rhythms of crowd engagement. He knows fans are growing tired of the rinse-repeat cycle with the bloodline. He senses the fatigue. He knows something has to break the pattern. And maybe, just maybe, this is the break the story needs. The risk? It undermines the tone he spent so long establishing. The reward? It makes the product feel fresh again. That's where the internal tension lies. Triple H has spent years fighting to be taken seriously as a creative mind. To prove he's more than just Vince's successor. Every move he makes is scrutinized by investors, fans, and insiders. If he greenlights R-Truth in this storyline and it flops, the critics will be merciless. They'll say he caved to nostalgia. That he undercut Roman's endgame arc with a joke character. That he lost control of the narrative. But if it works? He redefines what long-term storytelling means. He shows the wrestling world that he's not just capable of building slow-burn drama, but also of embracing chaos when the moment calls for it. He proves that even the most established arcs can bend in unexpected directions. And that's a powerful message for a company in creative transition. There's also the political layer to this. Triple H and Roman Reigns have history. Not just as on-screen rivals, but as leaders in the company. Roman's rise happened in parallel to Triple H's transition from performer to executive. And despite their different roles, they've always shared a quiet respect. Roman understands his value. He knows his presence moves numbers. So when he makes a request, especially a public or backstage push like this one, Triple H has to weigh more than just the script. He has to weigh loyalty. Does he honor the creative instincts of his top star, even when they challenge the company's tone? Or does he steer the story back to something safer, more traditional? Then there's the X factor, Truth himself. Triple H knows R-Truth isn't just a funny guy. He knows Truth has survived every era of WWE for a reason. He knows the locker room respects him. That he's a pro's pro. That he's a culture builder behind the scenes. If Truth gets this opportunity, he's not going to mail it in. He's going to deliver something the audience doesn't expect. Maybe it's funny. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe it's downright brilliant. So what's the right move? Creatively, it's a coin toss. Logically, it's a gamble. But emotionally, humanly, it's an open door. Triple H knows that sometimes, wrestling magic happens when you stop planning every beat and let the story breathe. And maybe, just maybe, letting R-Truth back in isn't about making a perfect storyline. Maybe it's about letting the story evolve, organically, chaotically, and with heart. So now, the dilemma isn't just about whether R-Truth returns. It's about whether WWE is willing to admit that unpredictability might be the exact thing the company needs right now. And whether Triple H, the man who built an empire on order, is willing to let in a little chaos.